How y'all doing? This is JPTV-3000. I'm here with
Jeff.
Jeff, appreciate that, man. Thank you for your time. Oh, COVID, man. No, yeah, man, no physical contact. I didn't think about that. But you know,
we're contaminated now.
Yeah, it's too late. It's going around everywhere. Today we're talking about, you know, three things: the oil field, the COVID, the coronavirus, and, you know, looking to the future from here on. So, Jeff, what's the oil field industry looking like right now?
Well, it's struggling right now because you've got the problem with the Saudis and the Russians that are having their war, and they're after the frac industry. They're trying to shut us down out here in North Dakota. So that's a problem that we've got going. And then combine that with the COVID, where you've got your supply just, or your demand has just dropped through the floor. Yeah. So there's not very much demand, so all those jets aren't flying and cars aren't moving. So then that drops demand. Your law of supply and demand. When supply is high, demand's low, price is low, and that's what we're happening, is because you've got the Saudis and the Russians are flooding the market, so the supply is high, and we're still pumping, so supply is high, and then our demand has dropped through the floor.
Yeah. So
right now we're looking at, I think today is $24 an hour, $24 a barrel for West Texas Intermediate.
But it can't last. You know, that's.
Well, everything will balance out in time. Yeah. But right now we're going through a period where it's going to be pretty rough for a little while. Yeah. So with the, I mean, we've been through this 2015. It did this, and then in the past it's done this. You know, where it's gone down. And one thing we always say out here in the oil field is, well, you get the money while it's here, because it'll go away.
Exactly. And that's why I'm always saying save. I've purchased a few things, but I've never went out and just made a big purchase of a truck or you know, anything crazy like that, because I was always looking at, okay, if the bottom falls out, you know, you need a good $10,000 or $20,000, you know, if it takes 6 months to a year. And, you know, you've heard about Continental and EOG. Mm-hmm. You know, you've heard about all these companies laying people off, you know, slowing down, Halliburton furloughing employees, which is just like the same thing. It's just a softer way to lay people off. But, you know, it's part of the industry.
Right. Yeah, that's really true, because I know that whenever I first came out here, I remember there was a kid that he was making, I think he was making $11,000, $12,000 a month, and he had this pickup truck that he and his dad had completely restored the truck from ground up, and it was brand new, and we all built it all the way from the ground up. But it was an older truck, and he wanted him a brand new diesel truck, so he was going to go and buy him a diesel truck. So I took him aside and said, "Hey, look here now. I've been around this for a while. Even though I was just starting here, I have worked oil field in the past. Actually, worked on the rigs, so I knew the cycle of how things happen." I told him, "Says, you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow." I said, "Save your money. If you want that diesel rig, save your money and pay cash for the diesel rig, or buy one that whenever the oil field takes a little downturn."
Yeah, wait till somebody. Like right now.
Like right now, you know, this is a good time to buy a diesel rig if you want to buy one.
Dude, you just said that, and for all the people that are out there working in the oil field, that's pretty much what I'm looking at. Okay, depending on how long this lasts. If it ends, you know, tomorrow or Friday, but if it lasts for a good little while, people are going to be trying to liquidate stuff that they don't need. Mm-hmm. People are going to be trying to get rid of trucks, boats, and anything else, especially if people start getting into that fearing and that, what do you call that? That panic.
The panic.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So if I'm pretty sure, or at least I think it's going to turn around, you know, but other people may just be worrying too much, right? Because there's only so much you can do anyway,
right?
And
well, the kid I was talking about, so there was about a 4-year period there that the oil field was doing really well. Yeah. And I saw him, I guess it was about a year later, and he's still driving his very nice little S10 pickup that he had that was restored, And he wasn't driving a fancy Dodge diesel pickup like he was talking about buying. So he came up to me, he told me thank you. He said, I really appreciate that talk you gave with me, because he said, I started saving my money. He said, then I got hurt on the rig. He said, I was off work for 6 months. I didn't have any income for 6 months. He said, if I'd had a note, I'd just lost everything.
Yeah.
And that's what I've seen time and time again, is people come out here and they something happens. You know, it could be something personal happens, you know, like that, where we are in a dangerous work thing. Things can happen.
Yeah.
We have good safety protocols since I've been out here. This time I've been here since.
And it's a lot better now.
4 months.
Yeah, and it's a lot better now than it was.
It's a lot better now than what it was before. Before it was
a free
the wild.
for all.
It was the Wild West.
It was the Wild West.
But now it's not so bad, and freak things can still happen no matter what.
Yeah.
And we deal with high pressure and mechanical things. Mechanical things break. High pressure things. Somebody open a valve at the wrong time. Something can happen. You know.
Or somebody forget to put something on a piece of equipment, and the same thing is always on the piece of equipment, but for some odd reason somebody left it off. In situations like that, people don't always think to, hey, why isn't there a valve up there? Because there's always a valve there all the time. But you know, that's part of the industry. And Jeff, what are you seeing in the job market in the oil field?
Well, right now we're going through a downturn. So what I think is going to happen here is that as it tightens up, so let's talk about the way a oilfield services company works. So I drive a truck. So driving a truck, how does that work? So you have a company that has a contract with the major oil company, whatever major oil company, Continental or
Oasis,
or Oasis, XTO, whichever company has. So they've got the contract with the major oil company, and then usually they will own some trucks that they personally own, and those trucks are running, and then they will also have trucks that are leased on to them. So owner operators that they lease on to the company. So what happens in this time period that we're in right now is that the market contracts, so they'll stop doing flowbacks, things that or they'll slow down on it. Not necessarily stop, but they're going to slow down. They're going to start pinching pennies a little bit.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. Cutting the budget, kind of trimming the fat pretty much.
They're going to trim back. They're not just going to blow and go. They're just going to trim back some. So as they trim back, there's less demand for trucks. So then, which trucks don't run? Well,
the trucks that are costing you the most. That's the ones that are going to run.
So one thing is that the oil companies will usually do is they're going to be really watching their P's and Q's, and whenever they see a ticket, they're going to look at it and say,
okay,
is that really what? Did it really?
Let me start looking at this.
And so they're going to.
How many barrels did he say? How long it took him to get?
So sometimes guys get complacent. They'll start charging a little more because they can get away with it, or hauling a little less, but saying that they're hauling more.
That's what did him. Who was that? Powerfield? Which one of them was it that was doing that? That's what did them in.
Yeah. I don't remember if it was Power Fuels.
They were in Wofford City. I know that much.
Yeah.
Dude, is MBI still a company?
MBI's out.
Dude, I couldn't believe that. But you know what? They reap what they sow, bro. They screwed me when I first came up here. I was like, okay, all right, I see how it is.
Yep.
He must be here. But go ahead, finish saying what you're saying.
So anyway, so it starts contracting. So you have where they're trimming the fat, and they're making sure that they're getting what they're paying for, and they're really watching on that. And then they might start negotiating where they'll say, okay, we want all the services, our costs reduced by 25%. Well, we've already been through some of those cuts, and there's not 25% left to cut. Okay. But there may be, instead of it being $130 an hour, there may be they charge $120 an hour or something like that.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. And then your oilfield services company, the first thing that they're going to do is they're going to start prioritizing the work coming in to make sure that the trucks that they own are fully booked.
Because it makes sense. You can't be mad at anybody for doing that.
So they're going to make sure that those trucks are running first, and then it kind of goes according to pecking order on the leaser trucks as to which one the leaser truck's running. Yeah. And if you hadn't been on your toes, if you've been too picky, if you're just a prima donna, you know, so no, I'm not going to do that or whatever.
Okay.
Then you might just be sitting and not have any work at all, and you might go out of business.
And this is just the way the industry is, man.
So this is the way that they operate on that. So that's a natural progression. Now, another thing that might happen is that, okay, so there'll be less service work that'll take place, because that's one of the cuts I make. Your production, generally, until they start shutting wells in, which they can do that for a period of time too, but until they start shutting wells in, then they're going to minimize their service work. And
wells would tend to be like a percentage. They'll shut in a percentage of wells.
Right. Yeah, they won't shut it down.
Yeah. But like the work that they have to get done, for example, you know, what's going on here, you know, that's already set to be done this year anyway.
Right.
You know, so they got to already get that done and out of the way.
There's a possibility that they can make some cuts even on what they were set to do, because what's happening, like right now, it's costing them for every barrel of oil. It's costing them money. So it's like, how far can you? It's kind of like playing chicken. You know, how far can you go before you turn off?
Exactly.
And that's basically what's happening in the oil industry. Is they're playing chicken with Saudi Arabia and Russia, and everybody's seeing who's going to blink first.
Exactly.
So
exactly. Now that we've talked about that, hold on just a minute. And we are back. What were you about to say, Jeff?
Okay, so one thing I was thinking about is that, so when we go through this slowdown, so this is a typical slowdown. So it goes through the slowdown, and you start sitting more. You start having gaps.
Yeah.
So that really plays mind games with most of the guys out here. Most of the guys out here, our women out here, are away from home, and they've got family back home. And when you sit for 5 days, that just drives you completely insane. So what will happen, and it's happened before, it's going to happen again. Yeah. So what's going to happen is that, okay, so you've got, say there's 1,000 trucks, and all of a sudden there's only enough work for 800 trucks. So then each truck gets more or less depending on what's going on. I mean, some of it is just pure luck, but
the work's got to be spread out.
But the work has to be spread out. So then you're going to have some guys that says, you can forget this, I'm not doing this, you know, and they're going to get mad because the company truck is running and they're not running, or maybe another leaser is running and
somebody else did 5 loads and they did 2 loads.
That's right.
Yeah.
So then you're going to have people leaving and going home. Well, as they go home, then that creates more work. So then your workload goes up. So there'll be a kind of an expansion contraction as it contracts down. And then it goes down to where, I mean, you might get to the point where you're only working 6 hours a day.
I've been there.
And it's just, but it tends to be kind of steady.
Yeah.
Where you're just working 6 hours a day, every day. Well, out here, you're still making good money.
Exactly.
So you're at that 6 hours a day, you're making more than what you would at 8 or 10 hours a day back home.
Exactly.
So you just ride that out. Just hang on and ride it out.
Did y'all hear what Jeff just said? Because I've been through it myself, and it just ride it out, you know. And like you said, the market always comes.
So then, what happens then is when the market comes back, then who has the seniority then? It's the guy that's rode it out because you've got all these people that went home.
Yeah.
I worked at a company that we went through some of that before, and in 3 years' time, I went to the senior driver. I was the one that had been there the longest of anybody. Yeah. So then that meant that I got the best work. Yeah. Pretty much of anybody.
And you got the newer, nicer truck, and all of that stuff goes along with it.
All the little perks that you get with that. Yeah. So that's what happens when you go through this. And this, but it's in the head. Yeah. I used to train truck drivers. That's what I tell them. It's in the head. You know, you gotta manage your thoughts, because you get your thoughts out and then you're out of here, and then you're sitting home with low pay.
Yeah, and to one of the things you said earlier, that there's two things I know when it comes to trucking. You can't let truck drivers sit, because when truck drivers get time, they start looking somewhere else. And I've been a truck driver for many years, and you start getting time, you start, oh, what are they paying over here?
Yep.
I mean, it's just it is what it is. And just like you were saying earlier about that guy not purchasing that expensive truck,
right?
That money allowed him to keep going until things got better.
Right. Yeah. He just got a 6-month vacation.
Yeah.
And he had money.
Yeah.
So he wasn't hurting.
Yeah.
He still had a place to live. He still had food to eat. He could go hang out with friends if he wanted to whenever they're off work.
And I've taken 6 months vacation. They are awesome.
Yeah.
Just in case y'all are wondering. But,
and then another thing is, so you bring that up about the vacations. So this is the ideal time to take vacations. So like, we've been really, really busy, and I was about to take some time off, go back home, fix up my place. Well, then as soon as this oil thing started hitting and the coronavirus started hitting,
yeah.
And I knew how that would affect it, so I canceled all vacations. Okay, I'm staying, because right now, today, I am still very, very busy.
Yeah.
I'm still making the full amount as what I've always made.
And we are too.
So I'm going to keep on while that's going. And then, as this thing slows down, then I'm going to get into the maybe sitting for a few days. Well, when it gets to that point, I've got money in the bank. I'm going to run home. I'll do my thing. And when I come back, I haven't lost that much.
Yeah.
And so that's the time to take a vacation. I see guys, they get real rigid of well, I work this day and I'm off this day. Well, you got to be a little more flexible than that. And then take it whenever it's not cost you that much. So that's one thing I look at.
And Jeff, since we talked about the oil field, I've also got to get your personal opinion on the coronavirus. What do you think? And just take it and go.
Okay, well, the coronavirus, of course, that's affected us out here because of the travel restrictions.
Yeah.
So if those jets take a whole lot of fuel to fly. The boats take a lot of fuel to go across the ocean. So anytime there's any restriction on travel, that affects us.
Yeah.
And then, so that drops the price of oil. So that affects us from that. The other thing that we have an issue with out here is that, like right now, the Canadian border, when you cross the Canadian border, you got a 14-day quarantine. And so if you go into Canada, now me as an American, I can't go into Canada right now because I don't have any business in Canada.
Yeah.
But we have a lot of people from Canada that work here.
Yeah.
So they have legitimate business and they can cross the border, no problem. They can still cross the border. But when they cross the border, either way, they've got a 14-day quarantine. So whenever they go home to Canada, they've got to quarantine for 14 days before they can work in Canada. If they turn around and they come right back across the border after that 14-day quarantine, then they have a 14-day quarantine on this side of the border before they can do any work. So that's 28 days.
What are they doing as far as state to state goes? Minnesota said that they're shutting down their state. So does that mean Williston no longer flies to Minnesota? Or?
Well, they're restricting travel, but I haven't seen anything yet where they're actually stopping the flights coming in and out, and they're not stopping the interstate travel.
Okay.
There's talk of them doing that. I haven't actually seen them do that. Like Idaho just went on a 21-day lockdown, but it's not you can still drive around. Okay. I could still go to Idaho if I wanted to, but they're closing all non-essential businesses in Idaho.
Okay, non-essential.
So you can still go to the grocery store and pharmacy and things like that. So one thing that's affecting us here now is that if you're on a crew that has Canadian people, for one, and you want to work more time, yeah, this is the time that you make the money.
Yeah. Because
whenever they go home and can't come back, well, that's a hole right there. Somebody's got to fill it.
Somebody's got to fill it.
So So there's some guys here that's exactly what they're doing. They're working, instead of working 28 days on, 14 days off, they're just working straight. They're not taking the 14 days off, and so they're making more money. Now we're in a slowdown, so at some point they're going to be sitting. So whenever they get to that sitting point, then they go home. Then they can sit at home.
Well, Jeff, hopefully, man, we'll get a chance to make some more videos, but it's starting to get dark and I can see it even more.
Yeah.
So this is JP TV-3000 here with
Jeff.
Thank you, man. Appreciate that. Thank you for your time, and y'all stay tuned for some more videos, and hopefully it'll be more daylight next time.
Sounds good.